Welcome everyone to Masters of Marketing. It is a Wednesday, and today we are going to be talking with a member of US Bank who has lots of insights on how banks are marketing during crises, such as this COVID outbreak, and also how they are drawing support from their communities with their language, driving volunteers, and a bunch of other great topics. So let's give a warm welcome to Katie Berry. Katie, it is great to have you here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Also, just to tell everyone who's attending, this is an Ask Me Anything. So Katie has a presentation, but at any time, if you want to write a chat in Facebook Live or in Zoom and you want to ask a question, we'll call it out during the show and get you an answer. Also, if you're joining us on Zoom and you want to ask the question yourself, I've unmuted everyone, so you are free to ask away. So without further ado, Katie, can't wait to see your presentation.
Great. Well, hello, everyone. Nice to meet you. I'm here from sunny Minnesota. So if you detect a silly accent, no, I don't live in Fargo, but yes, I am a Minnesotan. Other full disclosure, I have a dog who is usually walked over lunch. This is lunchtime where we are. So if you hear her barking, I'm very sorry, but she is very cute. So I actually am just going to show a video. I'm going to show our landing page. And then what I really want is a discussion. It is an AMA, so I want to hear from all of you, want to hear what you're learning, what questions you have for me about branding, about advertising, or about banking. I'm not a professional of finance, so I don't have any advice for you in that realm. But let's just get started. So I'm going to share my screen and show you a spot that we have debuted. Ross, can you confirm that you can see this?
Yes, I can see it. I see
Okay.
lots of yellow lines.
Birthdays aren't canceled. Hope isn't quarantined. First words aren't delayed. Caring isn't postponed. Courage isn't on hold. And love hasn't stopped. US Bank thanks you for keeping all of our spirits strong. We've donated millions to those in need and are always here for our customers and employees.
That is a spot of ours that just debuted last week, and really what we're focusing on is really thanking people. So when we looked at what we had to say as a brand, the first brand that we could think of, and the first point of view that we would just wanted to say was thanks. So thanks for staying home if you should be staying home. Thanks for going to work if you're our frontline workers. And thanks for still spreading joy, hope, and laughter in the corners of the world that you're in. We were very, very lucky in that one of our creators had a nephew who was 6 years old who is very, very well liked. And they had a ginormous birthday car caravan for him. So that's actually our first shot. All of this was sort of either shot scrappily by people on my team, or it was stuff that we sort of scoured the internet looking for moments of joy and then asked if we could use those materials. So I will own that they're not all of our original material. But I think that that really was what we wanted to say, was just thank you. This is a hard time for everybody. So thanks for doing your best. And at US Bank, we're trying to do our best for both our employees, our customers, and our communities. So any questions or thoughts on that so far, Ross?
So it's interesting that everyone says you shouldn't talk about COVID unless you can actually provide value or something unique to it. So you're talking about the epidemic and you're thanking people. And that's kind of unique because you're just talking about like everyday people use our bank. Thank you for doing it. Is there anything that's come out of this that's like, um, I guess this is just overall branding and this is helping people become aware of you. But does this actually help people get into banks more often and just like go on with their lives? Or is this just an overall awareness type thing?
This is a thank you ad, and I think that you bring up a really interesting point. What we saw this week was I saw the first from Chase JP Morgan, first ad that really focused on the mobile products that people can use. So whether that's taking a photo of a check and doing check deposit, doing mobile banking, transferring funds through products like Zelle, I think that next iteration is really going to have to show people that we know that it's hard for people to get out, but there are a lot of ways to still bank from your home or being safe. So I think you make a great point. This is a thank you. This is to say what we have seen is that over 56% of people, research shows, want to hear from brands. They want to hear what brands are doing. We're showing what we're doing. We are giving to a number of different nonprofits. US Bank has donated over 30 million. We have three major partners, we have Operation Hope, LISC, and then the United Way, and then we're also giving grants to 26 other local organizations. We're showing that side of us. You're right. The follow-up has to be, okay, that's good to know. But now kind of how can I use my bank? How can I go about my everyday life?
Well, so you had also talked about improving the community on a previous phone call through volunteering. I don't want to jump the gun, but does thanking people first for doing what they can to support the community lead directly into that campaign that makes it easy to ask people to volunteer?
Absolutely. It is National Volunteer Week. It started on Monday. And as part of our commitment, we already have a really intense culture of volunteering. And intense sounds like kind of a strange word, but we get paid time off. We have matches for donations that people, or excuse me, organizations that people are personally donating to. But part of US Bank is last year we gave over 334,000 hours of volunteering in our communities, and we track all of that. And part of it is you can volunteer for any organization you want. We do virtual volunteering, we do in-person volunteering, but that virtual volunteering, we're kind of feeling a void at US Bank. It sounds silly, but I spent 8 hours building a Habitat for Humanity house one day. And so we're really encouraging people to go out to volunteermatch.org as employees, find opportunities that relate to them, and then just make a difference, right? We're not being prescriptive telling people where they should volunteer, but we're saying, hey, there's still people in places that have a need, and we want you to help fill that need. And with that, actually, if you don't mind, I'm just going to share our landing page really quickly. I am very proud of this landing page. So this is an employee who is doing her part. She's made over 300 masks so far from home. So this is just one example of employees volunteering, but it's just something that really does come from the heart. It's just part of our company culture. And so that's really what we're saying here is that we're donating to relief. It's really important to also give of your time. And that's something that US Bank wants to really emphasize, not so much to the community, but to an internal campaign to say, now's the time to step up and do whatever you can to make a difference. And we are, as I said, being paid to do that as well, which is nice. So you can even take time during your workday and count that towards your volunteer hours.
That's awesome. So US Bank is doing this internally. All of the employees are being encouraged. Is there a way that you're tracking all of the non-employees that are also being encouraged? And do you have any success stories from the community?
We aren't tracking those hours, but we are tracking those stories. So what we have asked is that those organizations that we have donated or funded grants to, we're asking them to help share these stories of the impact. For example, I was on a phone call with Operation Hope yesterday, and Operation Hope provides financial guidance, and they gave over 16,000 calls in the last 30 days to people looking for financial guidance. So we're taking those stories, and I think that's what you're going to see in the next phase of our brand campaign. It's really telling some of those inspiring stories, of course, with permission, with their collaboration. But we know that our communities are doing great things. And I think that this is just something where people are looking for good news. They're looking to hear good things, but they don't necessarily want to hear their bank talking about how great their bank is, right? But we do know that organizations like the United Way, like LISC in those local communities, are doing great things. And so we want to help shine a light on that. So that's really what we're focusing on. We don't actually track the hours, but we do track that impact through storytelling. Another example is all the different meals that we've provided all across the country. We are working with our small businesses, our small business customers, to help support them during this difficult time, and then also provide meals, especially lunches to frontline workers. So we'll partner with a small business. They'll make 200 lunches, and then our employees will go and deliver those using safe social distancing. Want to disclose that, but just kind of working to tell that story as well.
Gotcha. These sound like great initiatives, and it sounds good to give grants to small businesses and help them. My one thing is most of our audience is smaller businesses and startups. And while this is a great strategy, it sounds expensive. Does it take lots of donations and lots of money to run a strategy like this, where you still spread the same hope and you still spread the same message of volunteering and you get the community around your small business to also participate?
I think that's a great question, and that's a question I'm asked a lot when I also teach executive education. So I teach people how to do social media, and that's always one thing that I say is that social media actually is not all that expensive, and you can just do great things. You know, there's free tools like Canva if you don't have graphic design skills, where you just sort of get on a local hashtag such as hashtag support local, join that movement. share what you and your employees are doing to make a difference. My husband is a chiropractor and he has 20 gallons of hand sanitizer. This sounds really silly, but 20 gallons is actually a lot of hand sanitizer. And anyone in the community can go into his clinic. You don't have to be a patient, and basically go and fill up your own personal hand sanitizer, right? There's ways that you can make a difference, ways that you can engage your community. But you don't have to be a brand like US Bank to be able to make a difference and sort of share that joy. And I think that's where you're looking to sort of create those moments of joy and also those moments of laughter. I do just have one more thing that I wanted to share. And I think that this is really true, which is brands I think are struggling because there is sort of this, it's almost like sickeningly sweet. Everybody has to have this really melodramatic piano music. So I just wanted to share a clip, and please know I'm not picking on any one specific brand with this spot. I feel confident that you get what I'm going with there. If you have time in your own time, I highly recommend that you watch that. It's about 4 minutes long and it shows lots of brands. But there's this really kind of down note, kind of, to build a home piano music. We are founded. We are here for you. And everything sounds the same. And I don't think that that's necessarily what people are looking for. I think people are looking to have smiles, to have just a moment of laughter. And I think that's where small businesses can sort of make that difference. I think another great difference is, do you have something that you could teach school children, right? So does your brand or your startup have something, a coloring sheet or a digital activation that you can get out there to help parents, right? It doesn't have to be expensive, but just kind of show what you know, help educate your community. If you were somebody who owned a yoga studio, could you do Facebook Live yoga? That doesn't cost you anything, but what I've seen is that people are sharing things like that like wild. But I want to take a pause here. You can tell I love storytelling, but I want to hear the questions that others have as well.
Gotcha. So my main question is, you're just saying be positive, share what you're doing, and whether or not you can financially support someone or, pay them to do it, like just sharing what you're doing will encourage others to do the same and be positive as well. And because of all these brands being so melancholy and, we're suffering together, like being that spark or that light bulb that brightens up the room will make yourself stand out as a brand because you're doing the opposite of what most people do. And it gives people what they want because everybody wants to be happy and they want to see the light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah.
Brian, do you have any questions? I see, Brian left. So no. Yeah, there aren't really any questions at this time. I've been writing down a lot of my questions and you've kind of been answering them as they pop up. I don't want to do a 180, but I will do a 180, which is, do you have really tough questions that people are asking you about just how the banks are working in general that you kind of try to answer in some of your marketing or try to avoid in your marketing because you're trying to go toward more positive things as opposed to directly talking about the challenges of like PPP loans and stuff like that?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think what is really tricky about marketing right now is that the conditions change so quickly, right? So we had materials on PPP. Sorry about that. We had materials on marketing that, give me just 1 second. Finley. We had materials on marketing with PPP, for example, but the conditions changed, right? So there was no longer PPP funds. So A, your materials are obsolete, but B, people are really frustrated. So our banking leaders, along with several others, sent letters to Congress really encouraging them to refund PPP. We know the Senate voted on it yesterday. We know that it hasn't been approved by Congress in full yet. So that makes it really difficult because people are dissatisfied with our response. They are sad and disappointed, and they're sort of, it's a chicken and an egg, right? We have to be that distributor of those funds. We need to process those applications. But if the funds run out, the funds simply run out, and they don't come from us. So I think that that's really where it gets tricky, is you do have to be very transparent. You have to let people know what that process is and where they're at, and know that it's not all, bright, happy sunshine. But what's difficult about that is that the status of something today could change tomorrow, right? So PPP today is very disappointing. I have no insider information on this, but it is very likely that next week PPP could be back and be funded. So that's where that challenge is. It's kind of like things are always changing. Mortgages is another one where people have a lot of concerns, and we're communicating what we know today. What we know today about mortgages could very well change next month, and that makes it difficult as marketers. What we have done, I will be quite honest, is we posted things, for example, on Facebook, and the information became obsolete, and so we deleted the post, not because we were getting negative feedback, but because the information was no longer accurate, and that makes it very difficult if you're going to create, for example, a TV spot that you plan to use for a month, to focus on things like that because the information may be obsolete.
That makes a lot of sense. So because information changes so quickly, and everyone says in marketing you should have relevant, timely information that helps people, it doesn't make so much sense to dwell on large marketing campaigns with changing information, but kind of come at it from the, if you have questions, we're happy to answer any of your questions in real time instead, which makes it more kind of a sales process,
Exactly.
for direct follow-up. And so
Exactly.
that's why most of your campaigns have been about community, about, the state of the environment of people's emotions won't change quickly because we're going through this and it's going to take time. And so the time that you need to create those visual assets and videos um, isn't wasted because they're not going to change. And so that's how you decide what to double down on. And you're already doing these things to help volunteering. So that's how you pick the one part of your business that you've been doing that you think is the most relevant to share right now.
And our commitment to our communities was before this, will be after this, and will be forever. It's just part of our DNA. And you're right. I think that is a fair criticism of marketing right now, is, well, why are you not answering the most pertinent questions to people who are struggling financially? And as a financial institution, that's a very fair point. And to your point, that's what we're saying is call us, have a phone call, speak with a banker, because your individual circumstances may not apply to a marketing, a website, and then also just that it's changing, and so our information becomes so outdated so quickly, especially as the governments, both the national and the state governments, make decisions, that you really have to be mindful of what is true today, and what's true today, as I said about deleting a Facebook post, may not be true tomorrow, even if you are operating in good faith with the best information that you have in the present.
Is there any evergreen content that you see that you can make today that 5 years from now will also spark people's emotions and be relevant, that you might not be able to make at any time? Um, that you've thought of? Like, just one example for this is, I would love to walk into a bank wearing a gas mask and be like, this is the new normal. Because previously you'd never be able to walk into a bank wearing a gas mask, or someone would be like, what is going on? But is there content where you can see yourself not just making content for right now, but just in the way that the world's working, make content that will last a very, very long time?
Yeah, I think one area, as and I said, we're cheerful, but one area where we can really focus on content is scams. So we know that there's a lot of product scams, there's a lot of financial scams out there as people are struggling. So we have evergreen content on our brand campaign landing page related to things like that. How do you use a mobile app so that you can stay at home safely? How do you protect you and your loved ones when you're unemployed, especially in an unemployment that was very unexpected? How do you protect you and your loved ones, especially elder fraud, from financial abuse scams? So there's a lot of that content that we had that we've tailored for COVID, but that will apply continuously, right? So if there's Hurricane Sandy, we know that financial scams will be a short follow, right? And that's sort of our reality, is that I think that consumer safety is something that is evergreen. We know that whenever there is something really challenging happening in the country, that people's financial situation changes, but also that there are people that are looking to take advantage of it. So that's the type of content that we focus on there. A great point about humor is, I think that's one line where as a bank we have really struggled. I think there's a very few financial institutions that can do funny really well, because people just want to know that their money's safe. Our our brand tone and voice is helpful, it's empathetic, it's encouraging, but in terms of being humorous, it's something that we've shied away from, because we don't ever want people to think that we don't take their financial concerns seriously. The people that do it well are master classes, and I applaud them, and I'm a little bit jealous of them.
For sure. Moving right on, I don't know if you can share this, but based on the fact that you work at a bank and you see people's like financial, how they're doing, the question is just, are there any small businesses that you see that are being like financially more successful than others during this time? And as a marketer, have you looked at any of the strategies they're doing to kind of see what they're doing differently such that they, are marketing to their community to get people to come in, or some other tactic that's leading to a less of an impact on them than most small businesses?
Yeah, well, I think you asked a great question. First of all, in my role, I don't see any customers' financial data. So actually, I cannot answer it from my own personal POV. I literally don't see anyone. So I actually don't know that. But what I would say anecdotally, and this has been my marketing observation unrelated to US Bank, is that I think that the businesses that have thrived have been the ones that have most been able to take physical and move it to technical, which is very difficult, right? It requires, to your point about being scrappy, it requires your tech team to really understand app development, to understand process flow, to be able to move physical employees to the digital space, to set up remote working and a best-in-class environment. So I would say that the products that people most need and the places that are the most digital have been successful. Things like a bakery, for example, I think have really had to think through, how do I digitally market these products? And I think I'm going to use a bakery, I think is a perfect example where you really have to emphasize how you're keeping people safe, right? So what will you do to deliver product? How will you describe that experience? And the more that you can emphasize in your digital experience, such as your website or your social media, how you're keeping people safe, the more likely people are to want to sort of use you. There's a restaurant near me who literally did a video showing exactly how they prepare your food and address the number of employees currently working there and how they're keeping sure that their employees are healthy so that your food would not be contaminated. And I don't know enough about food service to say that they were doing everything exactly right. But I think that it showed me that they cared, they were taking it seriously. And I think that that's really where that small business, the people that are able to show that, will do much better than the people that aren't answering those questions. There's a big barrier. And if you can't prove that you're keeping people safe, people will just not use you right now.
I completely agree with that. It's all about handling objections right now. I just got food from the same restaurant 3 days in a row, and the person that I was eating with was like, "I'm not feeling so great today. Do you think that they're wearing masks at this restaurant? We've been having their food for 3 days in a row. Like maybe it's contaminated." And I was like, "No, I went and picked up the food. Like they're all wearing masks. This isn't the answer." But just the fact that that's crossing your mind is kind of crazy at this point.
Right? Things
Yeah.
like taking a temperature, right? So this restaurant takes temperatures of their employees to make sure that they're healthy. Well, we never thought about that, right? As we sat, shoulder to shoulder with people in restaurants before. But I think, and I'm not just saying the food industry, but I think another example is plumbing. I saw a wonderful plumbing ad for the ways that people will still have plumbing emergencies, right? Even during stay at home, but them really walking through the steps of the protective equipment their employees wear and how they're keeping people safe actually made me genuinely take note of this brand. It's not a brand I was familiar with, and say, if I had a plumbing emergency, this is who I would call. Demonstrated their commitment to safety. And I do think that those small businesses will have a leg up. I think if you're not showing that, I think people will probably find excuses not to use you in the short term out of probably common sense, right? If you don't know that they're taking safety seriously, you have to sort of assume that they're not, and you might make a different choice. For example, ordering from a different restaurant.
That completely makes sense. Um, yeah, so plumbing is really interesting because they actually come into your home to fix your
Mhm.
problem. I'm trying to rent an apartment right now, and it's incredibly odd because the whole renting has gone online where it's Zoom, but no one actually comes to see it because they don't know if you're taking your own health seriously, and they don't want to move into a place not knowing if it was like clean before they moved in. So that's that's crazy. Like that's just my one room, but for any business that still has to meet in person, that's a crazy amount of effort to educate people about everything that you're doing to be clean. And like you
Yeah.
said, pretty important.
I think it's going to be really interesting to see how Airbnb responds to this. I am not picking on them at all. I don't know how they're going to respond to this, but once they get sort of back in business, their new normal, they are a best in class advertiser. They're great at storytelling, but how do you really make people feel safe to rent an Airbnb in, especially a metropolitan area where maybe they're having a breakup? I don't want to pick on any one community, but I think that's going to be really challenging, and it will be interesting to see how they respond.
For sure. I'm going to completely pivot back into volunteering. So, volunteering, great. I know a lot of people who actually, like, my brother is a remote consultant who he flies across the country to different factories and he helps improve their processes so they have better output. And at the moment, he was basically told, like, you can't fly across the country, like, just stay at home, improve yourself, and we'll pay you to basically, watch Udemy courses and get better at your job. So there's this large group of, just people sitting at home that can volunteer that don't really they don't have a full schedule, but in self-interest, like they want to do something that's going to have a long-term impact for themselves as well. So if I choose to volunteer at an organization, I kind of want to know that, if I'm putting in 5 hours a day for the next couple weeks, that either I build some relationships I didn't have before, or I learn a skill I didn't have before in what I'm helping. Do you have any suggestions for the types of organizations that are available or the opportunities you've seen that would be a good fit for that community?
Yeah, that's where I would go to volunteermatch.org. I believe they have over 60,000 different volunteer opportunities right now. Could be over 100,000. And so you can sort of say, what interests me in terms of a sector, right? Maybe the environment interests you, or early childhood education. What interests me in terms of a location? Can it be anywhere in the country? Could it be you really want to make a difference in your own backyard? And then what skills do you bring, and or what skills are you looking to gain? I think this is a really good
Mm,
time for marketers to say, yeah, I could try my hand at graphic design and build my portfolio, right? Build my portfolio in a new direction. I think especially web developers, there's a huge need there. I think project management is a skill, and as you look sort of in the agile marketing workspace now, there's a ton of opportunity to do agile. Finance, right? If you can help sort of, how can you help them manage their finances? Really, for any skill, any sort of sector, and really any location, volunteermatch.org will find something for you. And that's where I think that really you need to go to that centralized spot. Um, the one thing I would say too about building your skills is that, as crazy as it sounds, there are not a lot of places won't have summer interns now. They're really struggling with that. So especially if you are a younger marketer, this is sort of your opportunity to fulfill a void and maybe build your experience, by getting some really meaty projects, right? In my experience, we've always given interns very meaty projects, and I have experience in the nonprofit world as well. There might be a project that is in full, that was being saved for an intern that's no longer going to happen, and maybe you could do a project from start to finish and then add that to your portfolio. The networking piece is tough. As you get remote, what makes you so special, becomes more challenging. I do think Zoom helps, but it's challenging, and I will admit that.
Gotcha. So the networking piece is hard, but the other piece is great. Like, um, I've firsthand experience with a bunch of people that I knew were going to come to San Francisco, and because everything's remote, their internships were canceled, and they're looking for projects.
Mhm.
And I'm guessing with 60,000 opportunities, there's some big brands on here that you could, you know, go get a U.S. bank logo on your LinkedIn profile. Um,
For sure, for
do you
sure.
have
And
to?
they're all nonprofit. So I'm sorry
Okay,
to interrupt. I did just want to say, it is all nonprofit.
that's
So
what I
they're
was going to
not
ask.
you wouldn't have a volunteer with, Nike, for example.
Got
But
it.
that said, an impact is an impact. And actually, you could create a very large impact and a big footprint, right, in a smaller organization, and be able to speak to that for years to come. Sort of that big fish in a smaller pond.
For sure. So it is all nonprofit. I know of all of these small startups that are like coming into existence to, diagnose COVID or make face masks. I know that aren't nonprofits, but is there a way that you see nonprofits working with for-profits on this volunteermatchwebsite.com to take advantage of both of those sides of the organizations?
Yeah, I think what you find there is that organizations are internally communicating these opportunities, right? So it's sort of being encouraged that that's sort of a one-stop shop to go and to find those opportunities. But people are also being encouraged to explore something that interests you, right? Maybe you just type in, you know, homeless healthcare in San Francisco, right? And see sort of what pops up. Even though I'm pushing this sort of this centralized website, you could also just cold call an organization and just say, hey, do you have anything that you need help with? Because everyone is needing help, and there is sort of a scrappy quality to things. I would actually say even things like making a TV spot. A lot of that is not done by big Hollywood production now. So maybe you send them a sample, and maybe you help them produce a TV spot, right? Kind of the things that you might not never think you could do. Um, did I answer your question about that for-profit partnership? I want to make sure I answered it.
Kinda. I mean, I guess what I took away from that is if your for-profit has some capabilities like a studio that it's not using right now, and some people have some free time, they could make a TV spot at that studio for the nonprofit and then, get some sort of like, made by our team at the bottom, which would really help the nonprofit, but also help their company get some publicity as well. So there's some, I don't want to use the word synergy, but there's some overlap there where people can help each other.
Yeah, yeah. And I think where that does become really difficult is that no one is seeing each other in person right now, right? So even just to go and use some of your physical resources, unless you as an individual brought those physically home to your current workspace, that is difficult. I think if you're able to go in and sort of have access, that's fantastic. But from what I've heard from a lot of different states, you can't even go into your office
Office.
buildings right
Got it.
now. So I think that is tricky.
Got it. I've learned a lot. Thank you so much, Katie, for how to volunteer to help large organizations, how you can use volunteering to put out on social media what you're doing to inspire others, which will build your own brand because people will trust that you're having an impact on the community. The fact that you should talk about the fact that you're being serious because most people take for granted their food safety and food health for small businesses. But unless you're actually saying it out loud, people will have a lot of questions. So you need to handle those objections. The fact that you can create evergreen content with your community and a lot more people have free time so they can, make a community-based advertisement that could last for years to come, but you have the time and attention from your super fans to make that right now. There was a lot of great stuff in there about volunteering in your community, and I'm excited to use some of these strategies for my own business. I'm actually going to go on volunteer.match.org and see if I can like almost give away some of the tools that we have and be like, hey, like you're an intern, like do you want some free email marketing tools and stuff, just because you can do a project and you may not know what tools to use, and here these are just free, so while you help some other company, I can get some awareness and help some people by giving something away that I normally charge for. So there's a lot to digest in there and kind of opportunities where people can bring all these sides together. So thank you so much for your presentation.
Yeah, thank you. And the one other plug I would say is knowing that a lot of students are not getting to do their internships that they worked so hard for. If you have a connection at a college or if you have a favorite professor that you really admired, don't hesitate to send them a line as well, just to say, hey, here's what I, Ross, have to offer. Do you have any students that you think would benefit from this? Because I really feel for those people. Internships is a big way of growing your career when you're younger. And I think more and more of those, unfortunately, will be canceled. So anything you can do to kind of help that younger generation, I think benefits all of us. And then you're just being a good professional and sort of paying it back, hopefully, for all the help that you got when you were younger. So love teaching, love helping the younger generation. So couldn't resist that plug. But thank you so much, Ross. Thank you for being a great moderator. Thank you to everybody on Facebook Live for your attention. And I look forward to learning from you all as well. Have a great
Awesome.
afternoon.
Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much, Katie.
Bye-bye.
Bye.